All right. Welcome to the Totally Average Gamers podcast, as I like to call it, the Totally Average podcast, because we are just that totally average. I am Cade
Whoa.
Burns 30. I'm here with AB Cincinnati and I Frostbite. Welcome. I hope everyone's doing well tonight. So
Yeah.
this is our first inaugural podcast, if you will. Basically, we're here. We have lots of opinions on gaming. You probably care about none of them, but we thought we'd regale
Way to
you.
oversell it.
Way to oversell it. We thought we'd regale you with all of them on a semi-regular basis, as it is. A bit about us. We're all, just kind of surviving the pandemic, and we talk a lot, and we game a lot, and we stream semi a lot. So all three of us stream on Twitch. You can see our names below our video feeds. Kburns30, AB Cincinnati, I Frostbite. Feel free to go check us out at any time you'd like. We play all kinds of different games, retro games, modern games, games together. sometimes with chat, sometimes not with chat. Sometimes we hate the games we play. Sometimes we love the games we play.
More often, we hate the games we play.
Of course, like I said, we have very, very strong opinions.
Speaking of, hey, Frostbite, how was Tetris? You just brought a bunch of people over.
Yeah, I was just playing Tetris 99 to, kill some time beforehand, and it was a mix. It was all over the place.
You need to film more Tetrises. that was our takeaway. We were watching, and it was just like, fill 4 lines.
Well, that's what he was saying. I play Tetris like you do, just knock them out as quick as possible, which is not great for competitive play.
Yeah, it's really easy to watch Tetris, okay? I got I think 3 top 10s just now while I was playing. My best finish was 4th place, and then I made a dumb mistake and mucked it up. But anyway,
that's about how it goes whenever I play Tetris. I have never won a game of Tetris 99. That's why I switched over to Super Mario Brothers 35, which I have won, and then got bored of.
I've got a few wins on that one.
All right, guys. So every time we do this podcast, we're going to talk about something a little bit different. We'll kind of just, go around. We'll talk about, the new topic of the day. Chat, you're more than welcome to give us your opinions too. I guarantee you care about them probably a hell of a lot more than you care about our own. So we're definitely looking to hear some of that. We'll talk to you guys a little bit about the games we're currently playing, which, feel free to chime in on that too, and any news that we have. And definitely make this a little bit interactive. So today, we, 3 of us have been talking a lot about music in games and just music in general. So we thought that a great first topic would be about music, specifically music in video games. We are on Twitch after all, and a gaming podcast. So music in video games. This has sparked actually quite a bit of conversation between all 3 of us. AB Cincinnati was just showing me his giant stack of game soundtracks that he managed to take out.
I have opinions.
He has as many opinions as he has game soundtracks on CD. I too have game soundtracks on CD, crap. But no CD player to play them in. So,
computer's for?
My computer has no disk drive. What do you got there, ABC?
Is this like is this a collection that you've I don't know? Are you deliberately collecting game soundtracks, or is this kind of you just sort of like kind of person that tends to go for the special editions, or
right? So I guess the best way to put it is there is a mix of stuff that was included in special edition versions of the game. So like the thing on top here is from Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and those ones tend to be like not complete soundtracks. Those are sound selections. Usually they're like 10 to 12 songs from a game. And I've got like probably more of those than anything else. And that's absolutely where this started. But then kind of equally in here are just full on complete soundtracks that I have gone out and bought. And most of those aren't purchasable in North America. At least not normally, because it's just not a thing here the same way that it is, say, in Japan. So like, let me find a good example here. I have 4 of the Katamari soundtracks, which if you've ever played Katamari Damacy and its sequels, those games are kind of just as much known for their music as they are for anything else ridiculous that those games provide.
Today I learned that there's at least 4 Katamari games.
I was gonna say I didn't even know there were 4 games.
and like Katamari Damacy is one of those games where I have played the game probably a dozen times all the way through. And I love the soundtrack, and it's very much one of those things that I can put on while I'm doing some nonsense task. Like I'll be washing dishes and I'll be like, I'm just going to throw the Katamari soundtrack on, and automatically it makes me feel better. Just because it's so lighthearted and fluffy, kind of like the game is. so I have a bunch of soundtracks for things like that, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but I've also been to events like Video Games Live, which are live orchestral concerts of video game music, and I've got a stack of those concerts on disc.
I don't have them on disc because, like I said, I don't have a CD player, but they are. Video Games Live is on Spotify.
Yes,
I have been listening to them actually quite a bit lately.
And then I guess the last thing is not from special edition games, but like things like Nintendo Power used to, or not Nintendo Power, Club Nintendo used to have soundtracks as rewards. So like I've got the Majora's Mask soundtrack, and I've got
that one I have.
And I have the soundtrack for Super Smash Brothers, because if you registered both the 3DS and the Wii U game, you got a free soundtrack. So
I've got that one too.
There's a bunch of them where it's like, I didn't go out of my way to get it, but you know, it's a game I like, and so why not have the music? And there's not really a good official means of getting the music other than physically these days. So we'll get into that.
I'm curious, like, just you know, maybe as a nice place to jump off from, like, let's have everyone maybe give us some examples of a couple of your favorite video game soundtracks. Like, what comes to your head first?
So, okay, I'm gonna immediately just throw this out there and say you can't say Super Smash Brothers. It's not fair.
I was gonna say, I was actually thinking that too, because that's just like a whole bunch of game soundtracks in one. So that's cheating. You can't say that.
Yeah. I am particularly partial to The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Shadow and Noon's mentioning Twilight Princess in there, also a very, very good one. But
that's a great one. Yeah.
I still have a soft spot for Ocarina of Time. Gerudo Valley, Kakariko Village. Even just Kokiri Forest, the intro theme, those are, in my opinion, just core Zelda soundtracks. They're some of the best. One of the more recent soundtracks that I've actually been listening to a little bit, actually some on Spotify from Video Games Live, Xenoblade Chronicles, the first one. Gower Plain is one of the best themes ever. I'm dropping that down there. Clearly one of the best.
So it's funny that you say that, because I've played all of like 20 minutes of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I played the first one on Twitch, but I really haven't touched much of the second one. But I love the music of the first game. So it's like, is there something that captures the feeling of that in the second game? Because I have the special edition, it came with that soundtrack. I was like, I'll just listen through it and see if there's anything that immediately stands out. And there's one song, and I think it's Gormott, which is just like straight up, hey, what if we made a sequel to Gower Plains? Like, it has all of the same themes within it, and the same types of transitions between like big bombastic moments and like calm nighttime-esque world map music. And so it's neat to see, like, they clearly knew what people liked about the original game's soundtrack and tried to recreate elements of that in later installments of the same series.
Right.
But I guess straying from your answer about Zelda, I really like kind of the old NES and Super NES chiptune type soundtracks, like the Mega Man franchise, the Castlevania franchise.
Yeah.
In terms of like more modern equivalents of that, though, like I've got the Shovel Knight soundtrack here,
That's
which,
a good one.
Anything that Jake Kaufman does. So he does Shovel Knight, Shantae. He worked on a few other soundtracks for Inti Creates, if I'm not mistaken. And they've all got that very kind of like, what if we evolved on that retro chiptune style but like with the tools that we have today. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where my preferences for game soundtracks come in. But I mean, music is so varied in games, right? That like you get everything from these big, clearly themed around whatever's going on in the game type songs to just generally environmental music.
Yeah, and more like ambience, sort of just
exactly
filling in the background. Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of ambience, I really like the music from like Donkey Kong Country.
Oh yeah,
which aquatic ambience.
That's a good one.
Exactly. Well, that's where my mind went. So like the music in pretty much every Donkey Kong game has always stuck with me.
There's kind of a difference, like it's sort of a nuanced question, I guess, even just asking like what are your favorite game soundtracks, because there are games that I'll play, and as I'm playing them I'm like, damn, this music's so good, but it's not something that I'm gonna go on and like just like put on while I'm hanging out later on, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like it's great music for the game, but then it's like, and maybe it even has that sort of like gives you that nostalgia kick or whatever, depending on what game it is. But then there are other games, like there are game soundtracks that I'll just put on while I'm hanging out with friends or whatever. Like one of my favorite ones is Hyper Light Drifter.
Oh yeah.
That's a really
sure.
cool soundtrack. It's like sort of like it's got that sort of chiptune quality to it. It's a lot of like synthy kind of stuff and some piano. Like it's super moody. And the guy who did that one, he's called Disasterpiece. He actually does he did a few other games. He did Fez, which is another really cool one.
Yep. The music in that game is great. It's
I love
very
that game.
Very environmental.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a very similar quality with Hyper Light Drifter. And he also did a couple movies. He did It Follows, which has like his sort of, if you listen to go and listen to the soundtrack for that movie, it's like it's very video gamey sounding at times, so it kind of fits. But actually, interestingly enough, another one that I own it on vinyl, and I listen to it sometimes, but I've never even played the game. I just like the soundtrack that much. Is No Man's Sky.
Oh man,
No Man's... so sorry, I was gonna say that I think certain video game music has like that almost 80s or 90s Saturday morning cartoon vibe, and that it's like you listen to a piece of music and you're like, I don't know if this game is going to be any good, but that piece of music drew me in enough that now I want to like go play the game because of the music. And so I absolutely have soundtracks here for games that I've not played.
Well, if there's a game that's going to draw you in with its music, especially right now, No Man's Sky is actually a good one, because like I heard some of the music before I played it, and then I did play it, and then I was disappointed, and then I heard the music again, and then I thought it was. Well, then I heard the music again, thought, hey, this game, I wish this music matched the game, and then the game got good. So, side note, Foresight mentioned it too. Go play No Man's Sky if you haven't in a while. It's actually on Xbox. It's
definitely one I wanna try out. I've heard so many people say that like it's actually gotten really good. So
Hello Games, that's the studio.
Yeah, Hello Games.
I think Hello Games really put their all into making that game better.
They delivered the game they promised 3 years after the release date.
Yeah, and good on them for sticking with it.
Let's just hope that CD Projekt Red can follow in their footsteps.
So not really having played many of their games in the past, my understanding is that The Witcher 3 was kind of just as much a buggy mess when it first launched.
It was I mean, it was definitely not just as much a buggy mess. It was definitely buggy. Like there were occasional like glaring bugs, but they weren't it wasn't nearly as bad. It was definitely playable. Yeah, like
Witcher 3 was Game of the Year, when it came out, so it couldn't have been that bad.
Fair.
But back to music. Cyberpunk might be a buggy mess, but I've listened to the music from that game.
It does have some cool music.
Yeah.
I haven't played the game yet, but I've heard some of the music.
Whereas I haven't listened to a single thing from that game.
Yeah.
I've seen bits and pieces, but it was never really on my radar. So like I will have to go check that out.
It's pretty much like what you would expect from a cyberpunk sort of theme. Like it's got that sort of Blade Runner vibe to it a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is
now
cool.
is it like background music, or is it more like, say, something like GTA where the music is kind of integrated into the world design itself, or like, you'll pass a radio or you'll be in the car, or
diegetic music is the term for that. I think it's a little bit of both, if I'm not mistaken, in Cyberpunk.
I haven't seen too much gameplay, so I can't say for sure, but people have said that there's some like radio component of some sort. But
it might be mostly diegetic. Okay, yeah, we're getting in chat. People are saying it's both. So yeah,
I trust chat on this one. They've probably played more of the game than I have.
Yeah, here we've got a 3-man gaming podcast, and none of us have played the most anticipated game of the last 5 years.
Well, to be fair, I was gonna buy it until it turned out to be a buggy mess, and I'm like, no, you know what? Maybe later, maybe in like 6 months.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I'm feeling about it.
I should probably throw it a preface to anything that I say that I have no formal music training or
actually I was gonna ask
education.
About that, yeah.
Anything that I ever learned was self-taught. And
define formal. I took piano for 9 years or something like that, and
that's like formal education.
Yeah, I mean, I can read music. I can play, like I can sight read badly on certain instruments. I'm stressing badly.
Yes.
I guess I probably have a bit more training in that regard than you guys. I took music all through as much as I could, basically throughout high school, and did a lot of learning and on my own, like learning theory and stuff like that after school. And I also taught guitar, beginner guitar classes for a few years. So yeah.
I mean, you have to have some formal training if you can give other people formal training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also did create the opening music for the podcast.
Yeah, if you guys missed that, if you guys came a little too late, please, after when you're done, go back and watch the VOD. We're gonna post it. We're gonna share. We're gonna try and rip the audio for you guys later. It is fantastic. We will even maybe put it in our Discord channel later, so you can take a look at it, because it's great. So well done.
Thanks.
For us, but
thank you very much.
And I'm actually going to go one step beyond what I was just saying before about the whole no formal education in music, to say not only that, but like I have put a lot of energy into making sure that my old games are playable in like their original quality on or in their original forms on modern video screen hardware, monitor hardware, TV hardware, whatever. But like that only really ever applied to the video aspects of things, and the audio is effectively the same like crappy audio that you would have gotten out of a composite video cable. So like anytime that I'm listening to music, it's like, oh yeah, this really sounds exactly like it did back in the mid 90s, not knowing whether or not like that's actually what it's supposed to sound like, and there absolutely could have been, I know that there are a lot of mods to existing consoles that allow for things like digital audio out, which has never been a focus for me. So like there are some really interesting things going on with older games and making their audio like as it was intended to be listened to. Few things I guess in that space that I want to point out. Like there's a person on YouTube who has been taking all of the original audio samples that were used for Donkey Kong Country and its sequels, and has been recomposing the songs as they were, but uncompressed, and completely remastering them. So like you can hear what they would have sounded like if they weren't being pumped through the Super Nintendo's audio chip.
That's pretty cool.
But aren't they kind of intended to be put through that audio chip?
Well, so yes and no. The way that the Super Nintendo dealt with its audio was like you could take a
like a sample or something.
Yeah, but like the samples had to be I don't remember exactly what the duration of them was, but it was like an incredibly small time, and they compressed like they put as many of these little blips of samples together to create larger samples. And David Wise, the original composer for Donkey Kong, was discussed this and been like, yeah, I would record like a 10-second sound, and then I would have to chop that up into like half-second blips and then plop them all together and hope that the Super Nintendo understood what I was trying to get out of that.
Right.
And so like he has commented on this project and been like, oh yeah, that sounds like it was supposed to, before the Super Nintendo garbled the sound.
Okay.
So it's a really neat project. Shadow at Noon has said, yeah, the remaster sound incredible. But yeah, that it's a neat project. But like there's also kind of in the same vein, there's also I don't know if you guys have heard of these MSU1 mods to Super Nintendo games.
I have not, so
nope.
Feel free to teach us.
Tell me more.
People have figured out how to take effectively CD quality audio and put that into a Super Nintendo ROM. And so using ROM carts or emulators, they can play, say, like A Link to the Past with an orchestrated soundtrack
through a Super Nintendo ROM.
Through the Super Nintendo, yeah.
Interesting.
So people have been taking existing games and just modding them for like this high quality sounding music.
I'm gonna have to check this out.
Yeah, it's a very neat project. For as far as I know, it's only happening with Super Nintendo stuff, but maybe Genesis stuff has also been getting that treatment. As far as I know, it's just 16-bit though.
Let's we got to settle that old score. Like, who had the better music, Genesis or Super Nintendo?
Sega does what Nintendo don't. I'm sorry.
Genesis does what Nintendo don't. Get the commercial right. Come on, man. No, I think that the Super Nintendo probably had the better sound chip.
Well, let me ask you this instead. Like, forget hardware, forget quality. Which soundtrack's more memorable?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to take the middle road on this, and I'm going to say that it really just depends on the game, because there were some games on, like, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles, totally banging soundtracks on those games. Like, they sounded great, but then...
You would if you had Michael Jackson helping.
That's true. But then there are other games, like, I can't think of any specific titles, but there are some games where, like, there's just something kind of like plasticky sounding about some of the Genesis music. And then, you could say the same thing about Super Nintendo, like some of the Castlevania games, for instance, had really, really great sounding music. But then there were other games that just like sounded kind of flat, or just like they didn't really try that hard to really like push something good out of that sound chip. They were just like, yeah, throw in this composition and run with it, sort of. I don't know.
Right. Well, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm thinking Genesis, and the only soundtracks I can really come up with at the top of my head that I remember are the Sonic games. And incidentally, the first one sticks out more than the others, right? Green Hill Zone in particular sticks out more than Angel Island Zone, which is 3, if I'm not much mistaken.
Yep.
And yet, from the Super Nintendo, Dark World and Link to the Past, the Super Mario World theme, the Yoshi's Island theme, Kirby Superstar, Earthbound.
Super Mario World's not fair because it reuses the theme effectively throughout every single song within that game. So by the time that you've beaten
What's wrong with that?
No,
Well,
it's just
6 in
like
my
by the
head.
time you've beaten it, you've had that like one melody drilled into your head so many times, and like that's a recurring thing with a lot of the best music in Mario is like, you know, it happens in Super Mario 64, it happens to a slight extent in the Galaxy games, where like you hear
Okay.
bits and pieces of the same melody over again.
Yeah,
to the
it's called a leitmotif. It's a musical
again, no
trick.
music, no formal education music.
Okay, let's
but
just put Mario aside because Mario is very well known.
Mario.
But I said, I had Earthbound. The On It theme is great. Corneria from Star Fox. The battle theme from Chrono Trigger. The battle theme from Final Fantasy VI, which on the Super Nintendo was Final Fantasy III. Right? Like,
So
I can remember these and they stick out in my head, and yet all I can come up with off the top of my head on Genesis right now, sitting right here talking,
Sonic.
is Green Hill Zone and Sonic.
Yeah.
okay, so then I guess the a question to follow that up with is, can you name any of the people who composed those songs? Because
From on Nintendo, Koji Kondo did a good number of them.
just in general, because like if you take those composers and you say like, oh, you know, like I like the themes from this song, this game, and this game, and this game, and you find that, oh, they've all got the same composer, like,
Yeah.
great. So you've
Maybe
just
they
realized
had
that like
one
somebody
composer.
is somebody creates like memorable themes, and I would say more often than not, like we don't remember a composer for like one game. We'll remember their work across multiple series or multiple games, just because they've created such a diverse set of music or library of music.
Well, like I said, Koji Kondo did like 90% of Nintendo back then. So, I mean, a lot of them are him, but not the Donkey Kong Country games, right? That was Rareware. So, Aquatic Ambient still.
David Wise and Evelyn Novakovic.
David Wise also did Banjo Kazooie, didn't he?
He did Conker's. No, he did. He did one of the N64 titles, and I don't remember which one now.
Jet Force Gemini, maybe?
It was Jet Force Gemini, I think, yeah.
Grant Kirkhope did Banjo.
Grant Kirkhope did Banjo. He did DK. He did Perfect Dark and GoldenEye. I mean, he's worked on a lot of other stuff since. And if you look at his list, it's like there's stuff on there that you would never have associated with him because it's, the odd one out that's not part of his like general style. Like he worked on I think Kingdom of Amalur Reckoning for the 360, and like you look at that compared to like, oh, he also did Viva Pinata, right? Wow. And it's like that's a really wide spectrum in types of games, and especially the music that goes with them. But then you also get somebody range. But then you also get someone like Yoko Shimomura, who did Mario RPG, the Mario and Luigi games, Kingdom Hearts. It's like, okay, you kind of got a very narrow focus there.
Fine, but let's go back just to Frostbite's original question there. Which do you would like better from that era, Super Nintendo music or Genesis music? I think I answered my own question there. I don't care if they're one artist.
I think, Super Nintendo. But I bet you played a lot more Super Nintendo than Genesis.
I was a Nintendo kid.
Yeah,
so in that particular generation, though, in that particular generation, I think that it also really helps that the Super Nintendo had the better third-party support, because
back then,
outside of just the immediate Nintendo stuff, like you can point and be like, I like the composers from Square, or the composers for Enix, or Capcom, or
Mega Man X,
or exactly, or Konami. Back when they were all, I mean, Konami especially was coming off of the NES, where they were putting chips into the cartridges to add additional sound to the NES. Like
or like actually that reminds me of something I was thinking about when we talking about video game music topics is what they did with Castlevania 3. Castlevania 3 in Japan came out on the the disc.
Yeah, it came on
the
the
disc
Famicom
add-on
disc
for
system.
Famicom. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Famicom disc system, and that had like I think 2 extra sound channels or something.
Yep.
So when they released when they released Castlevania 3 in the West, they had to make the music work for on the original cartridge system, which is interesting. Like the music's still amazing in that game, and it's just it's just noteworthy because like they had to get creative with that. And basically what a lot of Nintendo games do, NES games, is they'll actually use like all or maybe all but one of the sound channels for music, but then some sound effects, when some certain sound effects happen, the music will cut out, one of the channels of the music will cut out to make room for the sound effects. And then as soon as the sound effect's done, the music comes back in. It's like you almost don't even notice it. But
It's kind of interesting.
And it also makes me realize that like the fact that we're even talking about like, oh, which console had the better music, like that's not even a discussion anymore because they're all just like, it's just
they all use the same.
It's high quality now. It's like
it's not Redbook audio, right? Because that was CDs, but
it's not. It's no longer about like which audio chip is more pleasing to the ear. It's just like no, they're all the same. They all use the same standard.
And it's all fully orchestrated. Almost every soundtrack now is fully orchestrated. It really is just a matter of, you know, who wrote the better music.
Yep. Well, and now the composers matter, which is why, you know, people actually know composer names.
That's right. Yeah. It's definitely more of a thing now.
So
which composer for sure.
But just wanted to touch on one thing, just since you brought up the disc system for the Famicom. There was a period, because there was a period of time where like everything in Japan came out on the disc system.
Mm-hmm.
You had entirely different sounding soundtracks between Japan and North America for a lot of like well-known games, and because of platforms that are out now like Nintendo Switch Online, you can go play the Japanese versions of Metroid or the Legend of Zelda games or Kid Icarus, and obviously not Castlevania because you have to buy the separate collection for that. But like all of those platforms offer the Japanese versions, and the Japanese soundtracks sound a whole lot richer because they've got the extra channels, but also because they had different hardware to work with. The Famicom sounded different than the NES. So like you go back and listen, it's like the opening to Metroid sounds a whole lot more like quiet and ominous than it does in the NES version, where it's like just blaring like the square wave at you in the opening.
Just like on off.
Yeah, exactly.
Levels.
Exactly. And so it's very interesting. Like they've got like this, it's like something is kind of creeping up on you vibe in the disc system version, but it's not present at all in the NES version. But now because of the platforms that give us access to those foreign versions, it's something that people can actively explore on a regular basis.
There's a recommendation for everyone watching right now. Go download the Japanese eShop or go to Japanese eShop store and download the NES and SNES online from there. Or I guess it's Famicom and Super Famicom online. But
I mean, for forgetting the music side of things, do that anyway, just because they get different games.
Can you do that? I didn't know.
Yeah, you can.
You just got to set up a Japanese eShop account, but it's free.
But you don't need to access it using a Japanese eShop account. So once you've downloaded it, I mean, like you can just go in using your normal North American Nintendo Switch Online associated account and play whatever games you want.
Possible. I'm gonna have to do that.
And as long as the game doesn't require a lot of reading, you're probably set.
And and like you mentioned those the Castlevania collection. That collection's really like Konami's been kind of dropping the ball the last decade or so, but like
last decade. Let's not
collection. Wait, you don't like pachinko machines, but they've got some great music.
If you have any interest in Castlevania games at all, like that's such a good collection for the price. Like
I actually played all of those games last year in their original Japanese formats because the Japanese versions are actually easier, but also they sound better. So like why wouldn't you?
It's really cool that they put both versions in that collection. I really like that.
The Mega Man collections are like that too.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I mean the music wasn't different
not
as far as I know,
different though, right?
but the difficulty changes are present between the two different versions, and yeah, they included all of the Japanese versions of those games. So
cool. I've only played the Mega Man X collections because I was always more of an X fan, but
oh yeah, so Stephen Ellis 386 wants us to talk about Tim Follin, who I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He is pretty much the master of the NES sound chip. I hate pointing to I hate pointing to this as his like magnum opus, but the Pictionary soundtrack on NES
is like, there's a title I'm gonna go look up right now.
you like, were it not for DMCA laws, I'd be like, we should be playing it right now because it's something like really special. You listen to it and you're like, that's not the NES. There's no way, because it's like the moment to moment usage of every single one of the NES's sound channels makes it sound like there are way more instruments going on in that game than I think the 4 that the system is limited to. So it's really neat. Like and he only worked on like these obscure licensed titles, or not well received for anything else, like the shitty gameplay or shitty graphics or whatever games, but he was just amazing with the sound chips of old systems.
That's cool.
And I think he got out sometime around the Super Nintendo. He's no longer part of the industry, which is unfortunate.
Okay.
It's definitely something. Pictionary specifically, I'm gonna go look up Pictionary after this.
Pictionary is the one that I can easily point to.
I mean, it's like whatever. It doesn't really matter what the game is. Like people, I think everyone can agree that like some of the most memorable.
Did he just freeze?
Yeah, I think we just lost Frostbite's audio momentarily, but I'm sure he'll be hopefully back in a moment. But to what I think he was about to say is that some of the most memorable video game soundtracks come from some of the worst games, I guess is the best way to put it. Like there are some really bad games with some really great soundtracks. I mean, I'm sure we can all come up with some.
There is.
Yeah, Frostbite, we hear you, but I don't think the stream can hear you. So,
chat is now mentioning all sorts of games that chat cannot hear Frostbite. Chat's mentioning a lot of games that have that are like games you might not have heard of, but have awesome soundtracks.
Let's come up with a couple.
Oh well, so yeah, they mentioned Plock. You ever played Plock?
I've never played Plock. Is that a PC game?
No. Plock is a Super Nintendo game in which you play as like this yellow dude with like a red hood and red gloves and boots, and it's like an action platformer where you throw your limbs to accomplish tasks while trying to reach the end of a stage. It's completely ridiculous. It's like all English humor within its writing, but yeah, awesome music.
That's the one I'm gonna throw out here right now, and I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this right now. I know AB Cincinnati is gonna be on my side. I'm gonna say the game soundtrack is awesome, but the game is not. Super Mario Sunshine.
That game is all about its atmosphere. So
yes.
it looks beautiful. It sounds beautiful. I hate the way it plays. I don't like its level progression, but everything about it is visually and orally appealing.
It really is. So, and the atmosphere in that game is great. The environments in that game are great. I'm not even gonna rag on the plot. The game itself, and I feel like I have some authority on this. I just replayed it on the Super Mario 3D All Stars collection. it sucks. It's I 120 shined the game. It sucks, and I know I'm gonna get some flack on that. And it's a strong opinion. People really love Sunshine. But
do you have a favorite song from that game?
Oh yeah, Delfino Plaza, hands down. You know,
see, I'm more of a Peanut Park kind of person.
Fair enough, but I can sit there and listen to Delfino Plaza forever, and then you get the Yoshi theme going on in there. It's great. Game sucks. Soundtrack good.
Yeah. Hopefully Frostbite is restarting. I don't know if I can hear him on Discord. I can't hear him on. All right, that sounds good.
Yeah.
He will be right back with us in just a moment. So I guess like one of the since we were just talking about like the limitations of music, that whole process of sampling continued really until like the N64 for Nintendo. But after that, everybody else was using CDs, right? Or during that generation, even Sega was using CDs for their games. And like that was kind of the point where everybody who had even like the slightest background in music could get into video game development, because it's like, oh, I can make an MP3 or a I'm trying to think of what the file format would have been back at that point in like the mid 90s, but suddenly it was easy for a composer to get into music development for video games.
For sure.
And then, eventually Nintendo caught up once they got over to the GameCube. But so here's a question for you. When a game has minimal to no music, do you notice?
That depends. So what you're asking is also, can the game effectively have great music with having little of it? I guess is another way to word that question.
Yep.
Yep. There are parts of Undertale that actually really do that well. Now, Undertale also has one of the best soundtracks out there. I should have mentioned that one earlier when we were talking about our favorite game soundtracks. But there are certainly points where it's like silent or very, very minimal, and it really works. That being said, they use that. I should say he uses it very effectively, right? Toby Fox. Yeah. Toby Fox did that entirely by himself. But
and if I remember correctly, his background is initially in music production before video games.
I did not actually know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's very effective. But then there are probably some games which just don't do it effectively. When there is very little anything going on, do you notice that? I don't actually know. I'm trying to come up with a good example.
Toby made music for Gen 8 Pokemon, according to chat.
Interesting.
Which I think he did work for the DLC, not the main game, right?
For the new, like the Crown Tundra and
I thought he only did stuff for the DLC, not the main game.
Shadow and says he made the tower theme from Sword and Shield.
All right, there you go. I guess I bring it up because like I played things last year like Tomb Raider, the original Tomb Raider, and in the original Tomb Raider there is like sound only when you are in danger.
Right? I noticed that when you were playing Tomb Raider on Twitch. I feel like the first time I caught you playing Tomb Raider, I honestly thought
that my sound had died or something.
That your sound had died. And the game is made in 97? Something like that.
96, 97. It stands out because you're like, like other games from roughly around the same time frame, a year or so apart. You think of like the mainstays of PlayStation in that era, all had these amazing soundtracks because they were all taking advantage of the CD hardware. Not in that stack of soundtracks, by the way, is any PS1 games where you can just put them in a CD player and listen to the soundtrack, which is most of them. But like you listen to this Tomb Raider soundtrack, or you play Tomb Raider, and you're like, it's been 10 minutes since I last heard any audio other than Lara's feet shuffling. What do I do with this?
I would say because that game has not aged well. The music has not aged well with it, or the lack thereof.
But that game was remade or remastered effectively from the ground up. I don't remember if it was Tomb Raider Legend or Underworld. One of them is supposed to be like a remake of that first game. And my understanding is that they effectively did the same thing with music. That like the focus was supposed to be that you are in this kind of solitary environment. And it's interesting because like in that regard, Metroid has done that on a number of occasions. When it wants you to feel alone or isolated.
Well, interestingly, to that point, Shadow and Noon also mentions Breath of the Wild. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild stands out in that regard,
definitely.
With a lack of music, when you're basically running through a very barren world that's been devastated by calamity, right? The music is very, very not much of it.
And the game does a good job of making you still feel like it's a Zelda game, though, because anytime that you do something like get on a horse, right? Like you can hear the Legend of Zelda theme gently, like note by note in the background.
Right.
So like it's subtle. It's it's not meant to be a constant reminder. They wanted to mix that feeling with the that feeling of isolation in the game.
Yeah, so that's very Frostbite's back.
And Frostbite's back.
Sorry about that.
Technology.
Well, where were we? You guys are talking about Breath of the Wild, it sounded like?
We were talking about, when a game can use a lack of music very effectively.
Yeah. Breath of the Wild's a perfect example of that, yeah.
Yeah, and that came from Shadow and Noon in chat. We had mentioned Undertale before. Maybe since that's brought up the original Tomb Raider, which I think tried to do that, 25 years ago, but now has not really aged as well.
Please don't talk. Don't talk about the age of games that came out in the mid '90s. It makes me feel old.
It makes you feel sad.
Another one is the Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, like the Soulsborne games.
Anything from From Software.
They have usually no music unless you're in a boss fight or in the like main sort of hub area.
Did early From Soft games do that as well? Like did Kingsfield or whatever the
I have not played Kingsfield. I don't know.
Okay. Because like I know they've been doing this for a long time, and that sense of like almost dungeon crawling and isolation has kind of been their shtick since day one. So
interestingly, now that I was just playing Demon Souls on the PS5, I'm realizing I never even noticed it that much. Like, we brought up, do you notice that? Does it bother you? Is it a noticeable thing? And in that game, no. But then again, I'm sitting there like this, hoping to God I don't just get killed in one shot from some demon behind me and lose 15,000 souls. So, that game maybe doesn't need the music the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think I brought up Metroid before. I was specifically thinking there's a moment in Metroid Fusion on the Game Boy Advance where the power is cut in one of the sectors.
Right.
And you go to explore, and the entire time that the power is out, there is no audio. Like it's just the sounds of you and the enemies moving around you. The standard audio for that area is just not there otherwise. And in the moment you're like, oh yeah, because the power is cut, but you don't think like there's been no music for like 20 minutes of me playing this game.
Is that when you're running from?
No, it's well, eventually yes, but you are going to restore the power because I think the SAX cut the power in one of the sectors. And
yeah,
like
I think it's something like that.
And for some reason, like that sticks out to me, even though when I was playing it, I absolutely paid no attention to the fact that there was no music there.
They did a similar thing in Super Metroid when you first land on the planet whose name is escaping me right now.
Zebes.
Zebes.
Yeah. Okay. When you first land, there's no music until you go and collect the morph ball, and then the camera spots you, and then as soon as you go up the elevator, all the music comes on and all these enemies have appeared.
Oh,
so sort of this quiet moment.
I haven't played Super Metroid in a little while. I should probably go back and do that, but
you should, because speaking of Super Nintendo, good music.
Yeah, well, there you go. And that's one of those games where I actually feel very mixed about the music. Like, there are a handful of songs I really like, and then there's a lot that I feel just gets really repetitive because, like the specific areas of the game where they use that music are almost too large. So I think it's Brinstar is like a good third of the world map, and you're in it for a lot of the time. And so, I really hope you like the Brinstar soundtrack.
I do, so it's good.
Right.
So, question from Chad from Shadow at Noon: thoughts on rhythm games, Crypt of the Necrodancer specifically. So I played. I actually haven't played Crypt of the Necrodancer, but I did play. On my account.
I played Cameron's copy of the game,
but I do own it. I did play Cadence of Hyrule. How long was that? A year ago now, or 2 years ago? I don't remember. Cadence of Hyrule was one of the best indie games I played a couple years ago.
Yeah, that one was really fun.
So, thoughts on the game? Love it. In fact, the Zelda music really works well with that kind of game, because Zelda music has been around for 35 years almost, and it's very memorable. So it's really easy to kind of get into the rhythm. I've heard Crypt of the Necrodancer is a little bit more frustrating.
Yeah, I played it a little bit. It's definitely harder.
I beat it recently. I actually finished it. I got to the credits, which is like one of 12 or something endings. But something I'll point out about that game is that it has like 8 different variations of the same soundtrack, because the original composer made the soundtrack, and then they went and got a bunch of guest composers to remix every song in the game. And so, like, the default, I think, for specific characters in the game is to use a certain artist's version of the soundtrack. And if you like that person's soundtrack, you can swap over in the settings to only play that person's soundtrack. Or you can say, like, between levels, switch whose soundtrack I'm listening to.
That's a neat feature.
Which is really neat. But, like, so there's, like, the heavy metal version of the soundtrack, and there's the techno version of the soundtrack, and there's, like... and the music's great, and like it is also built into the world itself, because like you'll enter a shop and the shopkeeper will start singing the sound or the song of that level.
My brain's going to like 10 different places here just on this topic. But yeah, so that game, it's interesting. Like, it's definitely no question, it's a rhythm game, but there's almost like 2 different types of rhythm games. There's like games where you, like Crypt of the Necrodancer or Cadence of Hyrule, you're like doing stuff to the beat, which is kind of I think it's a newer take on that genre. But then there are rhythm games where you are playing the music. Basically, it's like you press a note, or you press a button to play a note or whatever, and if you don't, then the note doesn't happen.
Right, the Guitar Heroes, the Poppin' Musics, the Dance Dance Revolutions, maybe to a lesser extent.
Parappa the Rapper.
Parappa the Rapper.
Don't forget DJ Hero.
Samba de Amigo.
Yeah.
with your maraca controllers.
How about what's the Donkey Kong?
Donkey Konga.
Donkey Konga. Yeah, with the bongos.
Actually, since you said that, like the game revolves around the beat, there was that platformer that used Jungle Beat. Would you use the bongos as just a normal controller?
That was a really fun game.
Man, I want those. I need to get a copy of those bongos.
Yeah,
I've got them. Probably can't. I don't know if they're in the view, but I've got them right on the shelf behind me, right there.
It was one of those things I actually
think
wanted.
They're just above the top of your camera. But like, so like, I guess that concept has been around for a little while. It's just not been explored fully. I think was it the Game Awards or what would have been E3 this year, there was a first-person shooter that was shown off.
Yeah.
That was I'm trying to think of its name, but you fire and like punch
Reload
to the beat on beat, and like it gives you a bonus multiplier or something like that every time you stick to the beat.
Yeah, that game's out now. It looks like
Oh,
fun, actually. I can't remember what it's called. I'm gonna look it up.
We're bringing back
bullets per minute. BPM bullets per minute.
Yeah,
I find those kind of games, you know, the Guitar Hero type, you know, play a note to move or whatever kind of game, you know, they come in waves. You know, you kind of get like bursts of them.
It was definitely a thing that was going on a lot in like the early 2000s. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely remember from like 2008, 2007 through like 2012 ish. There was like a big wave of rhythm games because it was like the pinnacle of that whole Guitar Hero versus Rock Band competition for like who could produce the better music game and have like more music incorporated into it. And like those series both exist still to a lesser extent than they used to, but
they're the exact same game.
I still see every once in a while that like, oh yeah, Rock Band 3 or whichever one it was is still getting new songs added.
Oh wow.
Which is like, you know, because there's a good support for that community. It's the only they're the only real players in that market.
It's not, but there's I can't remember if it's Guitar Hero or if it's Rock Band. It's an open like clone of it now. Clone Hero. I think it's Guitar Hero specifically.
Yep, I've seen that.
That's where most of the community is nowadays. And another unfortunate thing is that being able to play that on Twitch or YouTube or Facebook is become very difficult lately. We're not going to get too into that, but legal issues have made those games very difficult to, at least with popular music, to showcase.
Yeah, it's tricky to navigate stuff like that with those kinds of games.
Chat asks us, do we know what game was the first video game to have a song win a Grammy?
I hope it was Super Mario Brothers.
An original song?
Any guesses?
I got none on this one.
It's got to be a more recent one.
I'm going to guess it's a Metal Gear Solid game. So something like Snake Eater or whatever the song was for Metal Gear Solid 5 or...
If it was Metal Gear Solid 5, it might as well just win an Oscar because that's basically a movie.
I honestly have no idea.
Chat, if you know, Shadow at Noon, you're free to tell us because I do not know the answer to that question.
Civ 5. Civ 4, not Civ 5.
Civilization.
Yeah.
Wow, that's unexpected.
Christopher Tin, I think, is the composer.
Definitely didn't expect that.
I would never have guessed.
Hold on, I definitely have it here in front of me. That's why
Civ 4. I skipped Civ 4. I played Civ 3 and then Civ 5, and I own Civ 6, but I've sworn never to play Civ again because I value my time a little bit better.
Well, it's on here, but it doesn't tell me who the composer is, which is super useful.
Shadow confirmed in chat. It's Christopher Tin.
Okay, yeah,
you're right.
I mean, the Civ music is also great, and it's one of those things where it's simultaneously atmospheric and just like straight up, here's a bunch of national anthems. So so like I play Civ 5 and Civ 6 every once in a while with my fiance, and we'll be sitting here and I'll be like, I'm fucking listening to "O Canada" because I'm attacking Wilfrid Laurier and Canada, and it's like. And it's like, how is this video game music? But at the same time, you know, it took me 30 turns to even notice that that's what I was listening to, right?
Yeah.
And
guys make me want to play Civilization again. That's not good.
One more turn, Gabe Ernst.
That's one we could do on stream.
In 3 hours, 3 hours.
Yeah,
no,
3 hours. You can't finish a Civ game that fast.
What about games with music creation tools?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. There's not too many of those.
You got an example?
Okay, so we actually were talking about Guitar Hero before, and that eventually did incorporate a song maker into it. But since I know it's being ported soon. I believe Tadpole Treble, which was a Wii U game, is coming to Switch. Mario Paint had a.
I was going to say. I was going to bring up Mario Paint.
So Mario Paint, I actually have a connection to, specifically because of the music. In the, I don't want to say the early days of YouTube, but like the pre-real monetization days of YouTube, there was a fairly large community of people who made music using a program based on the Mario Paint composer.
Yeah, it's still out there. You can still get that program.
Yeah. Oh, they still update it. They still make new versions of it. But like, there was a very, like, when I say active community, I was part of that community briefly. And like, I think I had a version of Corneria, the Corneria theme from Star Fox, in Mario Paint, and it had like 3,000 views, which, you know, back in the day is like, I guess it's one of the few things for people to look at on YouTube. So that's where
it's viral.
But like, you know, on the other end of the spectrum, the stuff that, like, the most viewed stuff in that community was like, someone had What Is Love by Hadaway, and it had like 3 million views, and it was just What Is Love made in Mario Paint. And
wow,
like, it had a very active community where it was just like, let's see what we can make. Let's see what existing songs we can make using the limitations of this Mario Paint composer.
It was pretty good, and the composer within the game itself that program's based off of could do all of that as well. Like, it was,
it couldn't do sharps and flats, but
I was going to say that, yeah.
And you had like a 3 or 4 note limit, but yeah, it was pretty extensive.
For 1994 or 93 or whenever the game came out, it was pretty sophisticated.
Like that. Yeah, it helped Nintendo market it as a educational tool.
An interesting evolution of that, if you can call it that. I don't know, but in my mind, there sort of is Mario Maker. You can do like the musical notes in Mario Maker, and some people create some insane sort of like autoplay music levels where you just start and it's just like a roller coaster ride where it plays a song, and just the amount of work that goes into that is pretty crazy.
There's actually quite a few of those. Yeah.
So, kind of between the two of those things, there was this a program made in using I think it was Lunar Magic, which is it started as a SNES mod tool, or SNES game mod tool, and people were made a program called Auto Mario, which you've probably seen videos of, again, on YouTube, where, you know, if Mario touches certain types of surfaces, he automatically runs forward. Certain blocks will bounce him in different directions automatically.
Mm-hmm.
But people were like, oh, we can use this to make music. And there's also, especially out of Japan, there's all sorts of music that came out of this where people were like, oh, we're going to recreate like Queen's Don't Stop Me Now using Auto Mario. And it's like, you know, Mario runs through this really over the top stage where there's no floor and he's just bouncing around. But like the you know, the Koopa shells will make a certain specific note sound.
Yeah.
And because every time you bounce on a Koopa, the note goes up by 1. They'll be like, oh, so okay, we need to hit this note, so we're gonna have him bounce, you know, off of 3 Koopas in a row really quickly, and it'll produce the sounds that we want. So like there's kind of been this ongoing evolution of that initial Mario Paint concept that eventually did culminate in Mario Maker, and the teams from the original Mario Maker paid a lot of tribute to Mario Paint in the game itself.
Feels like there's some shared DNA there for sure.
I think it was their original inspiration almost. Like they looked back at, you know, the last time they allowed this kind of creativity in a game, and, you know, there's like the sounds and stuff that you see in Mario Maker are very reminiscent of some of the stuff that you can do in Mario Paint. I'm dating myself because, you know, I used to play Mario Paint a lot back in the day.
Yep.
I really liked that game. Now I gotta go find a Super Nintendo and a mouse. Yeah, that game had a mouse.
I got one of those.
Of course you do.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, so the very first thing I did when I bought a Super Nintendo as an adult was I went and built my collection to be exactly the same one that I had as a kid. And of course, Mario Paint was a big part of that. So, you know, looking at that initial collection, I was like, all right, I've got Super Mario and Donkey Kong Country and Star Fox and Mario Paint. Why did I have Mario Paint?
A better question is why did other people not have Mario Paint?
What was that?
Better question is why would other people not have Mario Paint? Everybody should have had Mario Paint.
There's a pretty good documentary by the gaming historian on YouTube about it from last year, I think, where he goes into like the history behind its development and its influence on composers, because a lot of video game composers have said like, oh yeah, I actually got my start playing around with Mario Paint as a kid.
Yeah.
Which is cool to see how that kind of came full circle.
Yeah.
On the other side, like you've got there are games that are actually like, even if you could maybe argue that they're not even games, like that are legitimately just made to be music making tools. Like there's I remember the first one that I remember using was on PlayStation 1. There was it's called Music Maker. Doesn't get any more straightforward than that.
I wonder what it's used for.
Yeah, but it was like you know, you could drop in different clips and samples, and you could change the tempo, change the pitch, and you stack different sounds. Like it was legit. Like you could create complete songs on it. And I remember spending many hours messing around with that with one of my friends back in the day, and we had a lot of fun with that. And then you've got on the 3DS, or maybe it was original DS, they had the guitar thing where you could strum the screen with your stylus and play.
I remember seeing that once.
Yeah, and then there's also the even better is the Korg. I can't remember what it was called, but there's basically like a Korg synthesizer on.
I was going to mention that.
Screen. People have actually made like legit music with that thing. Like
that
people perform live with it.
I think that one exists now on Switch as well. I'm pretty sure that they put out a equivalent for it, or for modern consoles with it. Yeah, because it was so beloved back then that it it sold well. But I would have to check. I was pretty sure that they made a newer version of that. I have seen that one in action, and like, I mean, people have. I'm forgetting what the name of the program is for the original Game Boy, where it's effectively it turns the Game Boy into a synthesizer.
Yeah, that's right. That's like a whole genre of music now, right?
I mean, you want to talk games.
It's people playing chiptune using the hardware that produced those original sounds.
Exactly.
If you want to talk games like this that people are using to make their own music, whether they were intended to or not, The Last of Us Part 2.
That's another kind of games where you can play music in the game, even though that's not the main.
Now, I haven't personally played it. Are you referring to, like, I know that I think Ellie plays guitar, right?
So like in the game, it's I'm gonna try and showcase this a little bit. You basically use the touchpad on the DualShock 4 and joystick to kind of choose which note you play, and you strum down on the touchpad on the DS4. So in the game, you're supposed to kind of play a specific set of chords to kind of progress through the section where you do it. But when you're sitting there playing the guitar, people are like, well, I'm just going to sit there and play guitar. And, I can't remember who it was now, but it was a very well-known musician, actually recreated his own song on there, but I can't remember offhand now who it was. But yeah, it definitely wasn't intended to be used that way, but where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Actually, since you said that, it reminded me of 2, maybe 3 other things that people have used intentionally or unintentionally for music creation. So people have done kind of the same thing that you described with the ocarina from Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask.
I was going to bring that
because up. Because that game actually does, for some reason, let you pitch up and down the sounds that come out of the ocarina.
Bend notes,
which is weird because you can't do anything with that, right? Like you can pitch up music, and if you do, then the songs won't activate.
Yeah, but Zora is really cool when he leans back with the guitar and does it.
Yeah, absolutely. Then the other 2 things I was thinking of were Minecraft has music blocks, which people have used Redstone to create all sorts of music with. And then I don't know how we missed this, but like Nintendo Labo, right? Like
Oh
They had
yeah.
the piano.
Oh, yeah, they had the piano.
They had the whole piano that people were making music with for a long time.
That's right.
And like people realized, oh, you could make like the way that it recognizes samples for audio. Like you could make little cardboard cutouts for what a specific instrument should sound like, and plug that into the top of the piano, and it'd be like, oh, this is a triangle wave now, and it would play the whole piano would act as if it was emulating that particular sound.
People always find ways to use these little these seemingly rudimentary tools to do like really crazy things that you would never imagine were possible.
Oh no. Okay, so Shadow at Noon wants us to talk about Wii Music.
Do we have to?
Wii Music exists. Okay, moving on.
Okay, let's go one step beyond that.
Didn't you own it as a kid, ABC?
I did. It was a mistake.
Many regrets were had.
I'm sure that there is a real piece of software somewhere in there that I was unaware of that is useful in some way, shape, or form. If it's there, though, I never found it.
Pinnacle of the Wii library is King Calamari.
So like that was never my preferred means of music creation on the Wii. But it existed. It was a thing.
Like I said, it exists.
Yeah, that's as much as I think we need to talk about Wii Music, right?
Yeah. So I wrote this down in our run of show, but like, any hot takes with regards to music and games? Like, you know, something that you think is probably the unpopular opinion with regards to.
I mean,
hot
I already
takes.
bashed on Mario Sunshine. Do I have to do it again?
music or sound design in video games?
Oh,
I think I don't know if unpopular opinions, but I think it's not even in the games themselves. And you know, Shadow Noon is mentioning that too. But I was about to say this. Startup themes, menu themes, they mean something. I mean, how many people in chat, three of us could remember the GameCube startup theme or the PlayStation 2
which one?
startup theme? Okay, the regular GameCube startup theme.
Not the monkeys.
Not, but how about PlayStation 2? I mean, the Wii menu music. Are they these things? Creating an ambiance in the system itself is just as important as creating it in the game.
Which is funny because I think that all of the current gen consoles, and even to some extent the previous gen, completely missed the mark on that. They all opted not to have UI music.
No, actually, the PS5 is the only.
It does, but it's not really. It's not like a startup music. It's kind of just like a background thing, but it's there. Yeah.
You can turn it off, but it's there. And but yeah, it's interesting that Switch doesn't have that. I think that's a first for Nintendo since the GameCube.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Because I mean, like the Wii and the Wii U both had shop music, and the Switch just straight up does not.
And the Wii shop music even made it into Super Smash Brothers, so it's got to be good.
Yeah, man, everyone loves Wii Shop.
The 3DS also had UI music. The shop,
yeah, actually, remember if it did
even the menu, the standard like top level menus had music. The only thing that didn't were like if you were in the settings menu, where it conspicuously cut out. But yeah, I actually would agree with that. That system level music is important.
Nintendo always been good at that. Like, not even just the music. Like, I can still hear the Wii menu sound effects in my head of like picking a channel, like all of them. You know what I mean? Switching pages. I can hear that. Right? It just it sticks with you. And try to remember what the Xbox 360 menu sounds were. Like, they weren't anything, right? Nintendo's always been good at that kind of stuff.
Oh, they were until the Switch, and then they stripped the Switch down to like bare bones.
So here's the thing: I think Nintendo understands the value of the music because they've put sound tests. They don't call them that anymore. I missed the term, but they've put sound test modes into two of their last biggest releases, right? With Smash and
Odyssey.
And well, I was gonna say, oh, does Odyssey have one? I can't remember. I know
Odyssey has you can pick.
I know the 3D All Stars collection has.
Yeah, 3D All Stars as a whole, like, you know, turn off the screen, listen to the music kind of thing.
In Odyssey, you just have a music player, so you can play any song you want during any point in the game. So it's pretty much the same thing. It's just instead of being in a specific menu, it's wherever you want it, basically.
Right. I mean, like, Nintendo has some sense as to like the importance of music because they have Sakurai focus on music being added to every wave of DLC. Like a good third of his presentation is like, all right, forget how the game plays or looks. Here's all of the music we were able to license for this. And
like when they announced Sephiroth at the Game Awards, it's like everyone, all you see is like comments about like, yeah, more Final Fantasy music.
which is funny because like if you look at the full list of Final Fantasy music, they have effectively like the same 4 tracks repeated because they've got the original FF7 versions and the Advent Children versions, right? But everyone's like, oh yeah, but they're totally different.
Yeah,
they're effectively the same music, but they're like, yeah, okay, this is the remixed version of the same song versus the original version of the same song. But you know, that was important for people because it helps flesh out that specific character's world.
Well, and for a lot of people, a game like Smash Bros is you know, it's a big nostalgia is like a big part of what makes it something they want to play, right? So you want to be able to put on the version of the song that hits you that way, if that was the original or the newer version.
And Nintendo's always been good about that because, like, even going back as far as Melee on the GameCube, like if you wanted to listen to the Fire Emblem theme, which was only available in Temple, I think, and you had to be playing as one of the Fire Emblem characters,
and you couldn't, you couldn't customize the music and stages.
You couldn't. You had to like hold down L and R when you were starting the game up, or while you were starting the stage. And only then would the Fire Emblem themes play. And it was like, oh yeah, because that's the special piece of music for this level. And we wanted you to be able to access it.
I think that's the first time I ever heard any Fire Emblem music.
It would have been it would have been North America's first exposure to Fire Emblem, right?
Exactly.
And it's the main theme. Like, and it's I've been playing the original. I mean, we'll get that in a bit. Yeah, and I heard that. I'm like, hey, I remember this. I heard that in Smash.
Whereas like going back to that collection of soundtracks, like that's one of the series where I bought a Japanese soundtrack. This is and like it's in plastic wrap right now, but this is a 5-disc soundtrack for Fire Emblem Awakening on 3DS.
No soundtrack on that one.
And that game is like, there are specific levels that I would replay because I wanted to hear certain songs again. Yeah.
Wow.
Like I don't know if you've played that one in particular, but when I'm trying to remember her name, when the older sister dies in that game.
Spoilers?
Yeah, it's okay. It's been out for a number of years. When the older sister dies in that game, and you have like that level where you're chasing down the enemies in the rain, there's like this one song that only appears in that one level, and that one song, I was like, I don't know the name of the song, but I want to hear that again. So I'd replay that one level over and over again, because it was like, oh, that's a really impactful song. But the first time I did it, I beat the level too quickly.
Okay.
Right.
So what you're saying is you're too good at the game.
Well, no, that game let you grind
appreciate
your characters. that game let you grind your characters, but the song is like a really long song compared to everything else in that game.
Yeah.
And that game didn't have like a soundtrack or a sound test mode. It didn't have a a way for me to go back and listen to it without replaying that level. So I must have played that level like a dozen times
just to
And
hear the
that's why
music, and then you got
Just 'cause I was-
overpowered, and
They
Well,
did that on
right.
purpose so that you would buy the Japanese soundtrack.
Oh well. So maybe we can jump over to that. Like, so how does one listen to game music? Hi, Olimar. How does one listen to game music today? Like, there are means of listening to some soundtracks, but
it's hard to listen to a lot of original soundtracks. That doesn't mean you can't listen to licensed covers, orchestrated versions. We mentioned Video Games Live earlier on, and I have a Spotify playlist for Video Games Live. Some games have easily released their soundtracks. Undertale is the one that really jumps out to me. That one's easy to find. Final Fantasy VII is actually really easy to find. It's on Spotify.
Capcom and Square Enix both put out their soundtracks pretty much everywhere.
We've spoken offline before that Nintendo is notoriously poor at releasing their soundtracks. In fact, they want you to buy Smash Brothers to listen to their music, right?
Yeah.
That's what they want right nowadays. But honestly, I find the best way to listen to game music is to, like we said, Video Games Live, things like that. Just find someone who's covered it. YouTube,
Okay.
There's some really great artists on YouTube who have created all kinds of one-man band things, acapella stuff. One of my favorites is Smooth McGroove on YouTube.
Yep, definitely.
There are some that I'll just listen to, like they're on streaming services. There are some I'll just listen to on there. I've got them in a playlist or whatever. Usually the more modern ones, because I'm probably, it's like I was saying earlier, like I love the like Mega Man 2 soundtrack. That's great, a great NES game soundtrack, but I'm probably not gonna just like put that on while I'm working or something.
Right.
But yeah, some of them I'll just listen to on streaming services. And then there are other game soundtracks where it's like, again, I love the soundtrack, but the best way to listen to it is to listen to it in the context of the game, I think.
I think there's something like that. I like having, I personally, I find playlists like that are actually really great for me to listen to while I'm doing work. Honestly, no lyrics.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah.
So it's sometimes, right? Like some soundtracks, like I like the Katamari soundtracks. Those are all vocal songs, right? But if a soundtrack isn't on a streaming platform or isn't available for purchase digitally via either the company's website or something like iTunes or an equivalent service, like there are physical soundtracks for a lot of these games. Especially for we talked briefly about sound selections, where it's like I've got a third of the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 soundtrack, right? What do you do with that?
Well, like I said, the only problem with a physical soundtrack is finding someone to play it.
Means of playing them. But a lot of these producers are putting not only on CD but also on vinyl.
I have a couple video game soundtracks on vinyl, actually.
So like you can, there's a resource that I personally use to seek out what soundtracks or what games have soundtracks for them physically published. And that's the website vgmdb.net.
You put that in chat.
It's the video games, or I think it's now the Visual Arts and Games music database. It used to be the Video Game Music Database. And it has pretty much every vgmdb.net.
Yeah.
And if you're an insufferable hipster like me and you own a turntable, then if anyone's interested, I'd highly recommend checking out iam8bit.com.
Yep.
What's
the other one? Is it Bravewave or Brainwave?
Oh, I'm not familiar with that one.
But
they basically help publish video game soundtracks in physical form, and especially on vinyl. And that's where I've bought, I think, all the ones that I've currently got. And they're always the packaging's always really nice too. Like they have this beautiful artwork and sometimes like colored discs and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
Neat. I recommend everyone check that site out if you're interested in stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
I am 8 number 8
bit.com.
bit.com.
I actually bought a copy of Street Fighter 2 from them because they did a like a 25th or 20th anniversary print of that game on Super Nintendo. And it's like, I don't own a copy of that, so I might as well buy this neat little special edition. But yeah, the site that I mentioned is great because if you're just like, I want to see like all of the releases from, we've mentioned Final Fantasy before, but let's look up Final Fantasy. And it will tell me like, yeah, okay, so in addition to, the original soundtracks, there have also been all of these orchestral covers from Square that they put out on CD, or and you can see not only like what to look up when you're trying to find them online to buy, but also in many cases they'll have links directly to Japanese or European, in some cases, distributors who are just storefronts that sell those soundtracks. So it's interesting that those resources are out there and they're not, well publicized by the video game producers themselves.
Yeah. Maybe they're not getting much of a cut of those releases. I don't know.
It's possible. I'm sure that the corporation and the composer probably get their fair cut from the licensing agreements.
I would hope so.
Or at least, yeah, at the very least, you hope so. But yeah, I've bought a lot of soundtracks like that. For like the games that I just feel like I always have to be able to hear those soundtracks. I guess something we didn't really talk about is games where music is a major focus, but not in a gameplay context.
Yeah, actually, I was going to bring this up earlier and then it kind of got away from us a little bit. But specifically, like, I feel like we could do an entire podcast episode on just music in the Zelda series. Like, that game has always like so much to do with music. Like, you're playing the ocarina or you're doing the conductor thing in Wind Waker, like they did Cadence of Hyrule. It's just like such a natural fit. Like, that's one that stands out to me is they've always got a focus on, like, music's always a big part of those games.
The very first Legend of Zelda game has a flute, a whistle specifically.
Yeah.
Which, if you didn't know, plays the same tune as the warp whistle in Super Mario Bros. 3.
The Legend of Zelda did it first.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. I was thinking things like, Persona, where Persona, and to probably the same extent, something like Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which is the spin-off that ended up on Wii U and now Switch, like, both have very strong music influences in them, where, like, there's always a like a full song with lyrics playing whenever you enter battle, or the characters with themselves will sing, but it's not or it's not gameplay relevant. Like, your character may transform into an idol, but they will not, like, that won't contribute to any of the stats in game or the actual gameplay. It then still plays like a standard JRPG, but they've woven that into that series DNA. I think another good example of that is like Bayonetta, right? Bayonetta opens with like this flashy, over the top musical piece that is really just there to exist while Bayonetta flies around and shoots angels in the face. But pretty much any major moment in that game is accompanied with this big musical number, effectively, that goes along with it. But again, not at all, like, that game is not a rhythm game. And that game, you don't move or do anything along with the music. It's just, it's made itself such a, like, front-facing part of that game.
Yeah.
So, like, the way that games are using music is so varied, and so, like, my hot take, which I don't remember if I got to or not, was that, like, I think music probably is one of the most important if not the most important aspect of most video games, because a game lives and dies based on probably three factors: the music, the gameplay, and the visuals. And the visuals can be complete ass, and a game can still be functional and still be well loved. Right? Because for the longest time, games looked like ass, but as long as they sounded like what they were supposed to, and they played all right, everyone rips on ET for the Atari 2600.
I was just thinking
ET on the
target.
2600. ET on the 2600 has an awesome soundtrack that actually sounds like the movie.
I think you gotta have gameplay though. Let's put that one in the top slot.
You have to have gameplay. Sure, you have to have gameplay, but like, music is probably the next thing. It's not the visuals, even though it's the thing that we all notice right away.
Yeah,
but like,
I think that's probably true.
I would say it's more creating that. We were talking about atmosphere before. I would say music is one of the most important things to creating that atmosphere. And the atmosphere is that most important thing. And the visuals contribute to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
I think it's like, I think this music is more sort of connected to like your emotions in a certain way though, right? Like when you if I boot up a game that I haven't played in a while and just like see the startup title or whatever, like it doesn't really make me feel anything. It's like, okay, yeah, I remember what that looks like. But then sometimes it's like you just hear that music and you get that rush of like, oh man, yeah, like it feels good. I remember my first time playing this game or whatever, right?
I mean, I definitely have that whenever I play a JRPG. I completely will be like, oh, right, I was trying to figure out what the fuck I was doing, and then I'll get into a battle. And the second I get into a battle, I don't... I know Cabrons has watched enough of my streams to know this, but like, I've been playing Final Fantasy VII recently, the original, and pretty much every time that a battle starts, I hum the first few notes out loud because I can't help it. Like, it gets me back into the swing of like why I enjoy certain types of games. And I feel that way in general about JRPGs. Like the second that a battle, major or minor, will kick in, that music jumps in and it gets me hooked again. So like, you can just run through a list of JRPGs and I probably feel the same way about all of them with that mentality, like Golden Sun. The second I played it with like a 6-month gap in the middle where I stopped playing it for a while. I jumped in, and the very first time that I ran into a battle, I was like, all right, it was this game. This is the one with like the awesome battle music. And I don't remember a single other song from that game. Not a single one. But that battle music got me back into the game.
Everyone remembers the Pokemon Red and Blue.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely. And like battle music is probably not the focal point in terms of music in that series anymore, because the random encounter rate is significantly lower, and so the time you spend in towns or talking to people is probably significantly higher than it used to be in those games. So the effort has gone into, and it also probably helps that the composer from the older Pokemon games is now running the Pokemon Company.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Junichi Masuda is the director of Pokemon, and he used to be the composer. So like the focus on music has clearly been steadily increasing over the years for that series. And the music reflects like not only the stylistic evolution of those games, but also like the regional influences that they're trying to incorporate. So like the most recent Pokemon game takes place in Pokemon equivalent of the United Kingdom, and all the gyms are soccer stadiums.
Yeah.
And so like there will be like crowd cheers that go on during the gym battles.
Oh yeah, I didn't like that actually.
But like
it was weird.
But it's memorable because like you'd hear it and you'd be like, I don't really remember this song very much. Yeah, well, exactly. But you'd hear it and you'd be like, oh yeah, this is the one with, and it immediately draws to mind like what game you're playing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Shadow at Noon says Gen 8 gym battle music and rival themes are the best of Gen 8.
I'm actually going to agree with that.
Is that Sword and Shield? Gen 8?
Yeah, that was Sword and Shield.
Gen 8 Sword and Shield.
I don't have a lot to
contribute to Pokemon.
Pokemon has a lot of music. And
those soundtracks for a long time.
Those soundtracks are like multi-disc soundtracks if you go and buy them. And I think they're available on streaming platforms.
I don't know. I'd have to double check that one.
Pokemon Company owns the rights to those ones, not Nintendo. So
that's right.
Right.
Those ones I'm pretty sure were on iTunes or Spotify for some period of time, at least like the DS games onward. Yeah, I think that we've probably run through most, if not everything, we want to say about music, right?
One thing I wanted to touch on actually, and it's sort of related to the Pokemon like battle themes, RPG battle themes, and all that. From a just composing perspective, I think people probably sometimes don't fully appreciate the how much different it is, like composing music for a video game versus like a movie or something like that. Because on one hand, your songs usually have to loop. They have to be able to loop infinitely.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time they might have like a little intro, and then there's the loop portion, and then maybe there's like an outro. And then sometimes with some games they'll even have like, okay, here you're in this loop, and there's like, okay, at any point in the loop, depending on which in some case, I wish I could think of, should have written down some examples or something, but there's some games that'll go so far as like whichever beat the song is on when like the battle ends or something, it'll cut into a different ending portion of music or something like that. Like they'll go so far into that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then just on top of the having to make it loop, because your music's going to loop, it has to be not annoying to hear over and over again.
Well, it should be not annoying to hear over and over again.
But I mean, even like look at a game like World of Warcraft, where people are going to play hundreds or thousands of hours of that game. I think a lot of the time people at a certain point are just going to turn the music off and play their own music. But like I've gone back to WoW a few times, and every now and then I'll turn the music on, and just like it's pretty good. Like they did a nice job in that game of making the music really kind of create that atmosphere like we were talking about without being just overbearing. It's like and I think if I remember correctly, in that game the music will kind of come and go as well, which is I think sort of common with big open world games these days. But
so I guess
it's tricky. It's not easy to make music
that raises an interesting question though. And then I've got one more question for you, Frostbite, before we close off this section. But first, I guess the one that you brought to mind is, are there games where you turn off the music, where you can't stand the music and you have to turn it off?
Yeah. So I usually end up doing that with games that I play a lot, like hundreds of hours of kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, because either it's like, all right, I've heard this enough and I'd rather just put on my own music, or sometimes if it's games that I'm just playing socially, I'm playing them online with other people, I might turn the music off because I'm like, I don't need that, I don't need to hear that over everyone talking. I just want to be able to hear my friends talking or whatever. So yeah, if it's a game I'm playing like hundreds of hours of, often I'll end up doing that. I don't know about games that just got really annoying. I can't
come up with one that's been so annoying that I had to turn it off. But
yeah,
I'm sure as soon as we close this up, I'll totally think of it.
All right, I guess the other question I had for you is, so you composed our opening theme for the podcast. Before you got on, Cabrins and I were briefly talking like what we thought it kind of sounded like. Did you have any influences for like what the sound for that was?
That's a good question.
So because like we were throwing things out there, like kind of has like a Sega Genesis vibe to it, and it kind of has like some Mega Man vibes to it, and
Well, I don't know if you remember. Well, I told you guys weeks ago when I was like, I'm gonna make a song, and I'm thinking something that's a mix with like Mario, Sonic, and Mega Man. I said those 3 games.
You did,
and you guys were like, one of you guys said like those games have very different musical styles. But
I think I probably said that.
But yeah, I think it was you. But I feel like it did kind of end up that way. Maybe there's more. I think more Sonic and Mega Man than Mario in there, but I think it kind of ended up right on the money for what I was kind of imagining. And also, it was so yeah. That was, I mean, basically what I was thinking was like, all right, it's got to sound video gamey because it's a video game podcast. And I think I asked you guys like, what do you think for what sort of vibe we want? And I think we decided just like, sort of a fun, upbeat kind of vibe. So I wanted to make sure it had that kind of feel to it. And then also, I wanted to give it sort of like through sort of an RPG battle theme to bring that back. RPG battle theme sort of vibe where like there's that part where it does the like like sort of descent into
like right at the end of the song, right?
It does it at the beginning and then it does it again at the end, and then at the very end there's like the little sort of fanfare sort of thing, which is also like sort of RPG
very Final Fantasy at the end.
So it's funny. I think in our conversation, Cameron referred to it as like very Castlevania.
Okay.
Because it's got like that kind of stepping up and building to what feels like it's going to be a climax.
Yeah.
Which Castlevania's music does a lot.
Yeah. I guess that's probably just an influence that I have when it comes to video game music.
But yeah, I think we named all the other influences when we were listening to it. We're like, yeah, this really sounds like this, or this really sounds like it could fit on this platform.
Yeah. But it made me really happy. Like you guys. A couple people I showed it to said it made them think of Mega Man or Sonic, and I was like, yeah, nailed it.
I was like, especially the percussion, right? The percussion sounded very Mega Man.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I said, I don't know what instrument it was when you were composing it. It's like a sawtooth wave or a square wave that has like a very Sega Genesis sound to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a mix of different wave sound, synth wave sound, basically waveforms.
Yeah, but like we totally identified those two things right off the bat. It's like, yep, that's very Mega Man. That's very Sega Genesis in general.
Yeah.
So good job. It sounded like both of those things.
Cool. Yeah, that's basically what I had in mind.
So why don't we talk about some of the stuff that we're playing recently?
Absolutely. So, I wanted to just bring it back and chat. ABC, you mentioned Final Fantasy VII, which I've also been playing, and you inspired me to play it. And I'm like halfway through that game now, like truly at the end, like halfway through, because I just hit that point where it says end of part 1. And for people who know Final Fantasy VII, what happens at the end of part 1. But I
don't know what happens. I'm also playing it right now, playing the remake.
No, this is but that's the remake, which is not even going to get close.
Oh, okay.
So, and I'm not going to spoil anything, although it's a 25-year-old game almost. Yeah. But I've also been playing, because Shadow, and you mentioned the Final Fantasy VII remake, because I'm sadistic and like to play both of them at the same time. And
that's just weird.
It is kind of weird, but I am. I'm about halfway through that one as well. So yes, Final Fantasy VII Remake is gorgeous. It is beautiful. It only takes you up to the end of Midgar, as far as I understand. I haven't gotten that far yet. And just for context, that's like 5 hours in the original Final Fantasy.
Boy. Yeah, I was going to say, I got out of Midgar and it was like 5 hours into the game.
Yeah, that's what it was like. It's like 4.5, 5 hours, something like that. So when he mentioned it feels epic, Final Fantasy VII Remake feels epic. It is a phenomenal game. I picked it up on the Christmas sale. I'm playing it on the PS5 through the backwards compatibility, so that's been fantastic. So I've been playing both of those, and again, because ABC and I seem to love JRPGs, I'm also playing Dragon Quest XI, which I've been doing on my Twitch channel, mostly on Tuesday nights. Very, very different, coming from the exact same company, by the way. Dragon Quest versus Final Fantasy, two different JRPGs. But besides JRPGs, I mean, what have I been playing? It's
hold on. Let's talk a bit more about FF7 for a moment. I'm curious, this is I've never finished a Final Fantasy game before.
Me neither. I'm determined this time.
this is the most I'm really enjoying the remake so far, and this is the most I've ever enjoyed a Final Fantasy game. It's not that
Probably
like
helps that it's not a turn-based RPG the
yeah,
same way.
it's like when games have when they combine turn-based battles with random encounters, I have a really hard time sticking with that because it's I don't know, it's just like it's not it's not what I'm into.
I have historically this time through, so I actually I had trouble playing Final Fantasy like 10 years ago, and I tried, couldn't do it. But a couple years ago, 2 years ago, so I played Final Fantasy VI, which was released originally in the States as Final Fantasy III on Super Nintendo. And that was the one where I actually found it easier. I'd already played Chrono Trigger, and I found it easier with the random encounters and stuff, and to kind of lean in, spend some time understanding the mechanics and understanding the menuing, like actually going through every single menu in a Final Fantasy game is really, really important, because if you don't, you're going to miss things. Like, for example, in the original Final Fantasy VII, if you don't go into the limits menu, you'll never actually start using the stronger limits. Like, it doesn't do it automatically. You unlock them, but then you have to actually like select them. So you have to actually, like, the best way to put it is to actually, familiarize yourself with the system. Now the remake really makes it accessible, as you're saying, because it's an action RPG instead. And I actually find it much more accessible. And like I said, I'm playing both of them because I'm stupid. It's so much more accessible, so much easier. Although
somebody clip that.
But both games, and this is actually the biggest problem I've always had with JRPGs. I had this problem with Chrono Trigger, and I finished Chrono Trigger. No, I finished the original 2 Dragon Quest games too, but Chrono Trigger was the first JRPG I ever finished. There was always a giant jump in difficulty in every single Final Fantasy game, every JRPG I've ever played. It's like you're coasting along, you're like, okay, I can grind here, I can grind there, fine, but I'm fine, and all of a sudden you're not fine anymore. And
Chrono Trigger doesn't really have that moment.
Yes, it
does.
Okay,
I bought a few years ago, I bought Chrono Trigger. I bought the cartridge because I was like, for some reason, just decided like I'm gonna try to get into a JRPG and I'm gonna play Chrono Trigger because it's supposed to be like, it's got a little bit more of an active thing going on.
Yeah,
they were starting to introduce that stuff. But I made it like, I think about 2/3 of the way through that game and reached a boss that I just could not beat. And it was like, well, I could go back and do a whole bunch of grinding, or I could just stop playing the game and never finish it.
And I chose the other route when that happened to me, and I think it was probably the same boss. Actually, when you fight Magus in Chrono Trigger, if you haven't leveled properly, and that's about maybe not quite 2/3 of the way through the game, but if you haven't leveled properly, it is he'll just wipe the floor with you. But every boss before that doesn't really have that same difficulty. And the current Final Fantasy VII, like the original one, I've actually found the bosses easier than the main like enemies. It's when you start finding enemies that do 200, 300 damage at a time, and there's like 5 or 6 of them. But there was a boss that I found. I just happened to be getting used to grinding a little bit more. There was a boss in the original Final Fantasy VII where all of a sudden, when I hadn't been having much trouble, boom, starts with 15, one-shotting you guys. And once you start one-shotting the team, I'm like, it's a good thing I'm really good on the healing magic, because this became a problem. In the remake, I hadn't really found any difficulties until, and I don't know how far you are Frostbite in the game, there's a part where you fight a giant house. It's not really a spoiler. But
okay, I haven't gotten to that.
And it's because he's like a boss in the remake. He's a regular enemy in the original Final Fantasy VII. Actually,
like a late game or a much later game regular enemy. Like, no, I haven't encountered him as a regular enemy yet.
You missed him. He's early. He's on the pathway between sectors 5 and 6.
All right then.
The whatever they call them. So it's basically just a giant house.
Oh, then I think I'm like about to hit that point. Actually,
it's inside of sector 6 when you're in the battle arena. If you've gotten there,
haven't reached that.
In the remake, and the boss of that area is this giant house, and you only have Cloud and Aerith fighting it, and that was where I started, where I found difficulty.
Interesting.
I didn't die, but I was close. I was very close to that.
Let me ask you guys. I have some questions, some Final Fantasy questions, as a Final Fantasy noob that I am. Something that I found surprising, not in a good or bad way, just I guess unexpected, is how linear the game is. Was the original game like that as well?
The original,
yes and no.
it's a bit of an open world after you leave Midgar, and so the remake is within Midgar. Midgar itself is a very linear area.
Yeah.
The story pushes you to certain areas, and when you're in like those areas, you kind of have to play through them. But then in between, you can kind of go do certain things. Like if you need to go back and you miss something, you can do that. So I haven't seen that in the remake at all. The remake is episodic. It's in chapters, and you can go back to. Apparently, you can go back to chapters once you've finished the game. I think you can go back to the old chapters, but like to get things you missed, especially Materia. But I haven't beaten it yet. In the original Final Fantasy VII, it's definitely more open, and people are wondering, and Square Enix hasn't really said yet, is in the next installment of the Final Fantasy VII remake
when you have an open game.
Because also when you leave Midgar in the original game, you access the world map for the first time, and you get to go. You can travel the world map, and you find Midgar is actually a very small section of the map.
Yeah, so it's funny that you bring that up because, like, in terms of linearity, there's a clip of me playing it because I've been playing it on stream that. Like I got out into the world map from Midgar, and there are 2 places that you can go from the world map, and the game effectively tells you to go to one of them.
Okay.
And there's like this clip of me singing along to the world map theme, just like commenting on how the world is empty and they're forcing me to go to like the one available town, because like you get out and there is a town where all of your party members have said they're going to go meet up for some exposition, and then there is a chocobo farm, and the chocobo farm is required to access the town after the next story relevant town. So like going there does nothing for you right away. So the game funnels you from one place to the next place to the next place in this open world that has like the illusion of openness, but other than going out and grinding against monsters, you have to go to Calm, and then you can go to the chocobo farm, and then you can go to the mine, and that takes you to the next town, and like eventually you will get full roaming capability, and there's stuff going on everywhere. But like for a long time it's like, oh, there's this town and you've got to go there, it's to the northwest.
Just understand, it's not an open world game. Neither Final Fantasy 15 is an open world game. But 7 Remake and 7 itself are not open world. They're not meant to be open world. 7 kind of feels like it should be, but it's not.
But I'm surprised at how linear it is.
And the Midgar section of the original Final Fantasy VII is just as linear. It plays the same way, just on a much smaller scale. So yeah.
I guess I wasn't expecting that, because you always hear about one thing you always hear about Final Fantasy, especially the older ones, is like that you have to grind. There's a certain point where you have to grind.
The thing is if you do, but if you fight every enemy along the way and don't run, you'll probably be almost okay. Like I just finished part 1 on the original one. The boss has a trick to it where you can't lose. So it's not like, it's not even a hard trick. Like it was really obvious what to do, especially because you find an item that you kind of can use like right before you fight them. So yeah.
But just for context, I haven't finished a Final Fantasy game either. I've played through a lot of 3, which is like Japanese 3, and 4, which was 2 when it first released here on the DS, and I've got like 3 different versions of Final Fantasy 6. I
got 2/3 of the way through 6, and then I hit that point when I was like, I can't anymore.
Those games absolutely require grinding to some extent. Like especially in the games that have like extensive job systems that require you to level the individual jobs, they have a lot of grinding. The later games are much more story and character focused, and feel more like a set of static hallways that you have to go from like point A to point B to get the next piece of story or the next battles. They're may eventually be some grinding that's required, but certainly to some extent there is a much more defined like place that you have to go to every time that you enter an area or leave an area, that wasn't present in those older games.
Correct.
Well, I'm interested to play when I'm done the Final Fantasy VII remake. I might check out 15 or maybe 12 as well. 12
I'm thinking
one that I've had my eye on for a while.
I've had my eye on 10 and 12, but I'm determined to finish both versions of 7 first. So moving just away because we got a little bit sidetracked there. We were talking about games we were playing.
It's all good. We got time. It's all good.
Yeah. One, speaking, we're gonna go Japanese, well-known Japanese franchises that I've also been playing: Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon, and the Blade of Light. This big thing.
A lovely physical copy that does not come with a soundtrack or a
physical edition that comes with no physical edition.
Game.
There is a digital. It's a digital copy only, but it is a nice 5-pound box of cool
nonsense.
stuff.
No idea why you bought that.
It's just, it didn't come with a soundtrack, right? That might have justified the purchase if it did.
No, the reason I actually wanted it was the art book. I like the art books.
Oh, I have a few of those. We'll get to those in another podcast.
But I'm playing that. That's the original. For those who know, that's the very first Fire Emblem finally localized. Also been playing every single Legend of Zelda game. If you've been out by my stream at all, you've seen me struggling through some of them, not looking as fondly on some of them as I had years ago.
Hold on. Can we comment on something for a second here about Fire Emblem?
Sure.
How much was the game digitally? Not the special edition.
No, I don't want to talk about it.
No, just what did the game cost digitally?
I think it was
$6.
Okay. I was gonna say $8. I think $8 Canadian.
So I think it was only released in regions where it had to be translated like this. The original Japanese release did not, to my knowledge, get a digital re-release or special edition because it's on Nintendo Switch Online.
That's correct.
If you have Famicom Online, you can play the Japanese version, and because it's not a very complicated game, like it's effectively like drag enemy or drag unit point click attack. Like you could play the original Japanese game with a little issue. And it was built into your NSO subscription.
They did add some quality of life improvements.
Yeah, they did. I just think it's like it's really funny that they didn't just be like, oh yeah, we're gonna translate it and put it out there as part of this.
Well, the game also does teach you. By the way, it teaches you in the intro the mechanics of the different classes. Definitely couldn't be able to do that if you don't speak Japanese on the original one.
Yeah. Shit, I didn't even think of this. I have something music related. Have you ever seen the original commercial for Fire Emblem?
I have not.
No.
Okay, so they produced a full like operatic version of the Fire Emblem theme.
Wow.
With lyrics in Japanese initially that describe the gameplay and tell you how to be good at Fire Emblem.
Nice.
But it's all like it's this whole group of people dressed up as characters from Fire Emblem singing the Fire Emblem theme, and the lyrics tell you about the game.
Yeah.
And when this was like that song was reused for I think it was Binding Blade, which is the one that had Roya in it. Came out after Melee came out, and when Brawl came out, they translated the lyrics into Latin.
Oh, nice.
And reproduced that for Brawl. But like, I always just thought it was so funny that like the lyrics effectively translate to like Fire Emblem, difficult strategy game, use swords on axes, use lances on swords. Wow. And it's so funny because it's just like they both made like a really catchy song and an instruction manual as a song.
That's pretty funny.
And they sold the game with it.
Yeah.
Good for them. Fire Emblem aside, I'll just run through the rest of my list so you guys get to yours.
Go for it.
Legend of Zelda games, currently playing the Oracle games, and those are on my stream as well. What else we got here? Demon Souls remake, which I have set aside temporarily because Demon Souls. That should say it all. I've set it aside because Demon Souls.
Did you not prepare to cry?
No, but I really, really like the DualSense as a controller, and I don't want to put it through my wall quite yet. So,
oh, it's okay. The DualSense won't get hurt. Just your wall, and you didn't say anything about liking your walls.
Not particularly. Anyway, great game and immensely frustrating. And then with you guys, Monster Hunter World.
Yeah,
keep them busy.
What about you, ABC? What have you been playing?
All right, so I've been playing I tend to play a little bit of everything all at once.
Right.
My list is going to look very different from yours, from the two of yours, which probably are mostly action games for the most part. But I've been playing through all the Dragon Quest games. I didn't want to play 11S when it first came out because I was like, I had recently just started 1 or 2. I actually bought Dragon Warrior 1 from Frostbite a year or so ago, and so like I played that version, which is not the best way to play that game these days. And I played through the first 6 Dragon Quest games, and so I've been working through 7, and 7 is like 100+ hour JRPG. So I'm like 30 or 40 hours into that on the 3DS. I started Earthbound the other day, which I've played bits and pieces of here over the years, but I have a physical copy of that game, and I felt like I should probably get around to playing that. I have been playing some Mario Super Picross on Nintendo Switch Online.
Always a good title.
Which I had actually previously bought Mario's Picross for the 3DS Virtual Console, and I've played a bunch of the other Picross games. The Picross S and Picross E on the 3DS
too.
And Super Picross and Mario's Picross in general are all developed by Jupiter, the same company that makes those newer Picross games.
Yeah.
So like they're all really interesting, and some of the later puzzles are all Mario themed, which is kind of neat. But like it's a Super Nintendo game, so it's also got surprisingly catchy music. Like a puzzle game like Picross shouldn't have as catchy music as it does, and it's got like multiple options if you get tired of listening to a specific song.
Hold on, man. What about the Tetris theme? That's like the
no.
catchiest...
I mean like if
because
you get
like
bored, but if you're playing Tetris, you can't switch what song is playing mid game. But like I can be like, oh, you know what? I'm getting bored of this particular song during Picross, and they've got like 2 or 3 other songs for me to switch to.
Yeah.
I just beat Donkey Kong 94, which is
that's the Game Boy one.
That's the Game Boy game. It's like a sequel of sorts to the original Donkey Kong, the arcade Donkey Kong, and is like the precursor to the Mario versus Donkey Kong series. Kind of puzzle platformer, very entertaining. It was like $3 on the 3DS eShop.
Nice.
Totally worth your money if you got a 3DS. Or
I never use my 3DS anymore.
I think you can probably find cheaper copies of it physically for the Game Boy, but like it's 107 levels or something like that of puzzle platforming. I started Mega Man 5 the other day because I bought all the anniversary collections while they were on sale.
Oh, nice.
And I've beaten Mega Man 1 through 4 and X through X3 before, so I'm filling it. Oh, and 9 and 10, which I did on stream. So I'm filling in the gaps of games that I haven't finished in that series. I'm still playing Animal Crossing. It's been almost a year.
Yeah, I see you on there a lot, actually.
I have logged probably somewhere in the mid 400s in terms of hours into Animal Crossing over the last year.
I stepped away from that one.
I am still having a great time with that, and I'm not the only one who plays it in my household, so it means that like between the two of us who are playing it, we're constantly working to improve the island, and like we've got like running competition to see if who can get the villagers' photos faster, which you do by like raising their max happiness with you. So it'll be like I'll leave notes around town, like I got so and so's photo, and I'll just like the next day there'll be just like a signpost outside, just like fuck you. Very wholesome game.
Yeah.
You ruined it.
It's pretty great. Obviously, I'm playing Monster Hunter with you guys, and we mentioned that I'm playing Final Fantasy VII, which is like the second or third time I've tried to get into this game. I have put so much time into Final Fantasy as a series and never finished a game. Wow. And I've been using streaming on Twitch as a means of like finishing games that I'm kind of on the fence about, because I find that the chat conversation about it,
because then helps. You feel shame if you don't finish it.
that too, but also like I feel like I get into games better if I'm talking them through with people. And then recently I started Baba Is You.
That's what I've been wanting to check out,
which is fantastic. I'm already stuck. I unlocked like 3 levels and I can't progress until I finish one of them, and I've been stuck on the same 3 levels for like 2 weeks. So but every once in a while I'll just be sitting there and be like, what if I try this? And I'll go like open up the game, and it takes like no time to load because it's such a lightweight game. And I go and try something. It's like, oh, that worked. Cool. I unlocked a new level. Let's see what that level holds. And it's one of those types of games where every level has a new element that's thrown into the mix for future puzzles. So it's been keeping me busy, and that game has like 200 puzzles in it. So I'm sure I'm playing other things, but like I just listed 9 games, and I'm probably throwing equal time into most of them.
Wow,
that's busy. Frosty, what do you got going on?
I mean, I played. I didn't write down absolutely everything I've played recently, but the main ones. You guys mentioned we've been playing Monster Hunter World together, which we should be doing more of, in my opinion. But
I agree. I agree.
It's only so many hours in the day, man.
I've been playing the Monster Hunter Rise demo quite a bit, even though it's like basically just two different missions. I've been playing. I've probably done about 40 or so hunts on there at this point, just trying all the new techniques, and trying some of the weapons. Like they made some changes to some weapons and like stuff like that. So that's been pretty
I have to ask. I know that demo is lasting, I think, until the game actually comes out, right? Is it one of those demos where the progress carries forward into the full game, or is it just like get used to the new systems?
So it's actually it's not really lasting until the game comes out. Basically, what they're doing is you can only download it until the end of February.
Okay.
And you can only play it online until the end of February. The demo has 4-player online co-op, which is cool, but
that's interesting for a demo.
Yeah, exactly. But that's going away at the end of February. But you can still play it offline, and you can play. It has local co-op, with multi-switch co-op, whatever they call it. I don't know, like local networking. But they also gave it a 30 quest limit, which is really kind of weird, but also very easy to get around. All you have to do is delete the save data for the demo,
data, and then
it starts all over again. So
makes sense.
Yeah, but what was your other question about the demo?
Oh, just whether the data was going to carry forward.
Oh, right. So I heard, I haven't actually like seen it anywhere. I don't know if maybe it's just going to be an automatic thing, but they did show on the website that there's some kind of item pack that you get when you start the full game, basically, if you played the demo.
Oh, okay.
It's just like a bunch of consumable items, like to kind of help you get started, I think.
Nintendo's done that in the past with a few of their IP. Pokemon has done that before.
Yeah.
So I feel like I should download the demo of that, though.
Maybe. It's pretty good. The demo's like, it's been pretty fun. Besides that, we talked about Final Fantasy VII. I'm also playing Demon Souls. I've been playing that one on stream, which is so it's taking me forever because I pretty much only play it when I'm streaming, and I'm pretty close to the end. Like I think I might finish it on the next stream, but I've got mixed feelings about that one too. Like the remake as a remake, it's really good. Like it's a perfect remake, but it's also made me realize that the game is not as good as its contemporaries. I think in a lot of ways, there's just some kind of game design things that they really improved later on, which can be a little bit frustrating. But
the description I've always heard for Demon Souls is that that like if you want to see what proto Dark Souls world and game design is, you should play Demon Souls. Not like play it because it's a good game, but play it because you can see like where certain ideas came from for Dark Souls specifically.
Yeah. So I still think it's a good game, but it's like it's aged a bit already.
There are mechanics that they clearly iterated on and made better. I mean, from what I understand, and I only played 2 hours of it, Sekiro really gets it everything right.
Oh, that game is fantastic. I mean, there's a reason it won Game of the Year.
I only played the first 2 hours of it and spent a good hour on the first mini boss of that 2 hours. Yeah. So I beat the mini boss. Nice. I think it was just like after that, like that's where I stopped playing after I beat that mini boss.
That game is tough. There's one guy, I don't know if it's the one you're talking about. He's like this kind of like ogreish kind of dude who's like in shackles. He's like coming down a hill, sort of. But
yeah, I can't remember if he's coming down a hill. Actually, I think it was. I don't think so. It's like the first like real mini boss in that game. It's like right after you wake up in the temple or whatever, and then you go, and it's like that first boss that you fight. He's not even a boss.
Okay, I'm not sure. Like the very first boss is actually one that you're supposed to lose. I'm assuming it's after that one.
No, it's after. The first boss is the one that cuts off your arm or whatever. Yeah, not that guy. He's like he's not a boss really. He's a mini boss. That's why I was so ashamed that I had so much trouble.
Well, so is the guy that I'm talking about. He's like this. I can't remember what he's called, but this dude like that's in shackles and he swings around his shackles at you. And a lot of people, myself included, get stuck on this guy pretty early in the game, and he can be pretty frustrating. But it's also like once you get past that, you're probably ready to tackle the rest of the game pretty much. So
something to return to.
Yeah. Otherwise, I've been playing a lot of just games on my PS5 because it's new. So I've got I played I finished all the Spider-Man PS4 Spider-Man, which I never played. I didn't have a PS4, so I finished that entire game. Got the platinum trophy.
It's the only game of platinum. Yeah. Actually, did I platinum? No, I might have platinumed Horizon Zero Dawn. I can't remember.
That one's on my list. But yeah, Spider-Man was really good. I really liked it. I swear I did not cry at the end.
Did you play Miles Morales yet?
No, not yet. I need a little Spider-Man break, but
yeah. I also finished. I definitely had a hard time with the ending of that game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was surprisingly emotional. Yeah.
I kind of wasn't expecting it because the game built up. So
it took me by surprise.
Yeah.
I also recently finished Detroit Become Human, which was a pretty interesting. I've never played any of the Quantic Dream games before, and it was pretty cool. I liked it. It's like I immediately wanted to go back and try changing some of my choices, but I ended up just watching some of the stuff on YouTube because it just takes so long to go back through it again.
I heard it was the best of their games so far.
I've heard that a lot of people prefer Heavy Rain. Actually, I don't know.
Oh, really?
But I liked it. It was pretty good.
I think it's interesting that I've got the lists that we all provided in advance of the games that we're playing, and I think we got one, maybe two next gen games total across our lists.
There
aren't a lot of them.
Recent current gen games even. You've got the Spider-Man remake, which is technically a game from 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
You got Demon Souls, Final Fantasy VII remake,
A lot of remakes, yeah.
And Animal Crossing. And I think that's all that's come out of the last year and a half that we could say is like really current.
Well, those are the games we're currently playing, not the games.
Well, that we're currently playing.
Right. So there are other games I played this year that just came out this year, but
which might actually be a good segue. So like, we didn't really talk about ourselves much at the beginning of this podcast, but maybe it's a good segue to talk about like what do we normally play? What do we like? What's our background in games?
I mean, it's interesting, but a better question is what don't we play? I mean, I grew up. But even then, I dabbled from time to time in that too. I'd say I probably played less sports games than anything else. But I mean, I grew up Nintendo, so I have a soft spot there. But I've got everything. I got the PS5. I've got.
That's why you play less sports games, by the way.
Probably.
I got Sega monopolized them in the 90s.
Probably. I do have Xbox Game Pass. I've got Switch, PS4 really sitting next to me. Like I'm all over the place. I mean, I had, I go from Mario to Zelda to Final Fantasy, to Demon Souls. I have other games lined up that are quite recent, all over the map. I mean, I played games with both you guys. I think same can be said for all of us. I mean, if there's something out there that chat likes, that one of the three of us is probably going to play it, unless it's Madden, and we're probably not going to play it.
Yeah.
And if one of us has to play it, then Cabrins is going to play it for us.
Okay. I don't like Madden. Madden sounds fun. I'll play NBA or NHL, but Madden's kind of boring.
You heard it here first.
I have Cabrins NHL 18.
Cabrins does not like Madden.
I don't like Madden. I also don't like football that much.
There you go.
I guess for me, yeah, I mean, I would agree. Like, I guess I play a lot of different stuff. I guess my sort of comfort zone is usually with like action RPG or action adventure sort of games. Yeah, like your Zeldas and Monster Hunters and Dark Soulses and all of those ones. Third person action adventure sort of stuff. That's sort of my main shtick, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I'll play like I've also been playing Tetris recently. And,
oh, it's good to play some Tetris.
Yeah, yeah, all kinds of stuff, I guess. I tend to shy away from the really hardcore JRPGs, as I mentioned, but
now what do we consider like a hardcore JRPG here?
I don't think you get much harder core than Final Fantasy. That is like the pinnacle.
Yeah. I feel like you
JRPG.
Very easily could. You just have to like increase the level of Japaneseness of
like like Persona or something. Like I have zero interest in playing a Persona game.
No, that's fair. But when people do say JRPG, like the first thing people go to is Final Fantasy.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Hey, we got
Tummy Hurts is raiding with a party of 2. Thanks for the raid, Tummy Hurt.
Yeah, thank you so much, my friend.
So in terms of what I play, we got a follow. I don't see who that is because I've got a window up in front. But
John A57.
John A57. Thank you for the follow. Yeah. So in terms of what I play I want to say a mix of everything, but I don't play a ton of sports games and I don't play a lot of shooters. Occasionally,
I guess I think I'm the shooter guy of the three of us. I do play shooters.
I'll dabble, but I'm not a huge fan.
And like maybe as a third genre that I don't spend a whole lot of time playing is probably racing games. In general, although viewers of my channel will know that I have had the misfortune of playing some racing games at Caburn's request in recent times. And none of them are like good.
Ever.
No, these chose like 007 Racing and Dukes of Hazzard Racing for Home, and not good racing games. But like my bread and butter, my favorite genre is 2D platformers. So I mean, you look back at what I was saying that I've been playing, and yeah, there's a lot of JRPGs in there between Dragon Quest Earthbound and Final Fantasy, but I've also got Donkey Kong 94 and Mega Man 5 in there. And like last year I played through all of the Castlevanias and a bunch of Mega Man games. And, I have probably more experience in any other genre with than with,
it's a very we the three of us have a very eclectic taste, so there's always something for us to talk about or stream or co-play. Like, you know, we got it covered.
One of our first streams, when at least two of us were first getting into this, I don't know about when you started, if you started prior to us, Frostbite, is like we did a Super Mario World randomizer race between the three of us, and like I think the one or two times we did that, I, at least when we finished, I was in the lead both times, because it's like, it's a platformer. I don't even have to look at the screen. I like it's muscle memory. It's all like muscle memory.
You guys know that game so much better than I do. Like I thought I knew the levels, but there were a few where I was like, I don't know how to beat this level.
We should totally do one of those on this on the Totally Average Gamers, some sort of race.
Yeah,
definitely think that chat might appreciate that a little bit.
But yeah, I would say that in terms of like the type of stuff I play, especially on my streams, there's a lot of JRPGs, simply because they make for good, long-lasting content, and in the short term,
chat and play.
You know, in the short term, I do a lot of smaller things like platformers, or that one time that I played all the Star Fox games, or you know, lots of filler. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I probably a bit of both. Very first world problem. I have an abundance of games, too many games to play, and I've been constantly working through my backlog. I'm finally past the 50% mark.
Nice.
Finally. So
I think mine just keeps growing.
Yeah, mine too.
What was that?
My backlog just keeps growing. Your
backlog? So 2 years ago, which feels weird to say now, 2 years ago, I was like, I'm gonna finish effectively one game a week. Finish 52 games in the year. And it was in part because I recognized that I needed to finish exactly 52 games to break even on my backlog. But also because I was like, I wonder if I could do this. Like, I play enough games. And so I finished the 52nd game with like 3 days to go in December.
Nice.
And one of those games included like near 100%ing Skyrim. So like there was a lot that happened in that game.
Wow.
But you know, like I broke even, and in that year I like avoided buying games because I was like, I don't want to expand my backlog by anything. And then last year, because of COVID, I easily finished more than 52 games without even thinking about it, just because I was home for like a third of the year with all this extra time on my hands.
Didn't finish Dukes of Hazzard. It crashed like an hour, like after like 2.5 hours.
It crashed 2 levels before the end.
Consider it finished.
Well, that's what I did, but like I was so distraught, and I was like, K-Brooks was watching that. He's like, oh no, what are you gonna do? And it's like,
I'm like, did you save? He's like, I don't think so.
It was like I'd forgotten to save. Or the memory card crashed or something like that happened, and I was like, I'm gonna put on an even worse game so I feel better about this. And we put on like 20 minutes worth of 007 Racing, and I was like, nope, I am never finishing that one. It is just so awful. It's a spy game, but the entire time you're in a car. So they're like, be stealthy and take out these enemies and hide behind walls. And it's like, I'm a car.
Wow.
Hide behind bigger walls, maybe.
And it's like, fight that helicopter. And it's like, again, I am a car.
That didn't stop. What Die Hard movie is it when he takes a...
The Free or Die Hard.
It's but yeah, so slowly working through the backlog.
Wow.
I guess the last section we've got listed here. Hey, chat, any questions either about music or about video games in general for this week?
gaming news. Tell us what you think. What kind of stuff you want us to talk about, or whatever.
And if you don't have anything to say to us here now, that's totally okay. You can follow us on Twitter. You can get the link with ! Twitter, or feel free to join our Discord or try to build up our Discord community there, and you can chat with all of us there as well. The link should also be there, ! Discord in chat.
And all of us are also active separately, individually on Twitch. Our handles should be just below our images.
Right there.
And we, as we just mentioned, all have different content. Sometimes we overlap, sometimes we do our own thing. So far, we've been trying to keep a weekly habit of getting together on Wednesdays for some Monster Hunter. Weeks where we've passed on it have been generally dedicated to either doing our own things, or in the case of like last week, we were planning for this week. So be sure to keep an eye out for this channel, especially on Wednesdays going forward. There will be updates via Twitter if that changes.
Yeah.
Or in Discord.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to be putting out regular episodes of this podcast. So if we're not doing any co-streaming or gaming, we will definitely be chatting about all these opinions that I actually really hope you cared about all the stuff we talked about. I had a good time.
I feel like we'll get off this we'll end the episode and I'll be like, there was something I needed to talk about with regards to music, and I just completely forgotten about it until
we probably could have talked for hours and hours on it.
Sure,
I'm sure, definitely.
For sure.
Which the nature of doing this on a platform like Twitch, where we are concerned about the viability of holding on to these episodes both in audio format and as VODs on Twitch, means that we couldn't do things like include any video game music in the background or like sample anything to show you guys, which I think is like peak Twitch, right? Like
yeah.
Like here's a 2-hour talk about video game music, and we didn't show you any of it.
Yeah.
Hope you looked up the music while we were talking about it.
I really do.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Yeah, well, I guess that's about a wrap for tonight.
I think so.
That's a wrap.
Thank you, everyone, again for watching Totally Average Gamers, the Totally Average podcast.
Hey, chat, who should we raid?
We can go ahead and find a good someone to do that too. I'll take suggestions from you guys if you find something quicker than I am.
No, I'll leave that to you. But oh shit, I just remembered. I also just did a speed run of Pikmin, and while it was completely fraught with problems, I want to throw that out because I was proud of that run. That run that I could not upload because it was so fraught with problems.
It was. All right, guys.
The timer died on me.
Well, like I said, guys, thank you again for watching the Totally Average podcast. We did mention at one point World of Warcraft, so we're going ahead with a raid for some classic World of Warcraft. Go check out Lost Fables. He's a great guy. Please go give him a follow. He's actually co-streaming with Cage Matt. You can go give him a follow as well. Thank you again, guys. We will hopefully be back very soon with new podcasts, some new co-streaming content, maybe some Monster Hunter, which will make Frostbite very happy. Again, guys, thank you so much.
Stay average.
Stay
average.
Stay average. I like that. We might just make that a regular thing, guys.
Oh man.
All right, guys. Have a good night, everyone.
See ya.